It's time to recap the end of the season for the New Orleans Saints. Wasn't great. Um, Kind of what I expected. There's not really much to talk about in the grand scheme of things. The Saints did have a chance at a playoff spot a lot later than I thought, based off of how hurt everybody was. I mean, Derek Carr was done for the year after making a interesting choice trying to be like Taysom Hill and jump over someone and landed right on his hand and head. Um, yeah, it wasn't great. Last time I saw you guys was week 15. Since then, oh man, some of the worst games I've ever seen as a Saints fan. Um, the Saints traveled to Green Bay week 16 to play the Packers. It went about as great as you think it would be. During this whole time, Alvin Kamara did not play either. He was 50 yards away from 1,000 for his career. Um, that was pretty much the only thing I wanted for the last part of the year because I knew we weren't going to make the playoffs. It was a hard road ahead against playoff teams, and I didn't see it happening. Um, I mean, Spencer Rattler would have had to have been Tom Brady when he had um, Gronk hurt, like mid 2010s. And Edelman was hurt during that stretch. If you know the receivers, you know it was bad. And with the Saints, we were getting to the point with injuries that I didn't know some of the guys on the team. And like going into preseason, I'm thinking like, oh, I like this guy. I like this guy. If something happens, I like him. And I mean, you saw it. You saw my videos. But guys just kept getting hurt and hurt and hurt. I mean, without quarterback one, without running back one, without your your athlete one to whatever Taysom Hill is, but he's one of the most valuable players on the team. Um, Tight end position's been in and out of different usage of Jawan and Foster Moreau. It seemed like Moreau was the lead tight end, even though I like Jawan's potential. Um, Going into the year, no Ramczyk. Eric McCoy got hurt for a few weeks, which kind of started the spiral of the season was Eric McCoy's injury. Um, Cesar Ruiz, Lucas Patrick. It wasn't great. Then Chris Olave gets hurt multiple times with just the concussion. Um, and Rashid Shaheed, which was the shocking, probably the most shocking injury because it almost came out of nowhere. Rashid Shaheed's injury. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say. Like, I don't know what else you wanted this team to do. Defense played well. Defense got even better despite the injuries. Um, you traded Lattimore. Demario Davis missed his like second game in his entire career. Um, Paulson Adebo basically broke his leg. I'm not a doctor, so there's my simplification of oversimplification of that. Pete Warner was out for a few games. It was just a mess all over the place. I don't know really what to do. I mean, I'm watching and then Dennis Allen obviously got fired. Um, I might as well just skip the Packer all these games. I mean, in short, the Saints lost 34 nothing to the Packers. Let me just make that clear. Um, then the Saints go and they play the Raiders. This was a game that I thought, yeah, maybe they got a chance to pull off some sort of win. But even with I mean, there are talented players on the Raiders, and I won't lie about that. They of course got talented players. Jacoby Myers I think he was going into this game with no drops at all in the entire year, and he was fantastic. I think he was one of the most underrated players in the whole league this year. Then you have Brock Bowers, who's obviously Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate. He might be my vote for, at the moment, for our awards. He might be my pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year, but there's still the playoffs to play, so I'm not going to just make my opinion right now. Um, but yeah, the Raiders have clearly they have healthy guys, but they're just not good in a lot of positions, and I think the quarterback position was one of them. There was a lot of issues with the Raiders outside of, and injuries wasn't necessarily one of them. Um, and when you got the Saints going to practice squad players, guys who weren't on rosters before the injuries, that's when you know you're having a tough season. So I'm not shocked the Raiders ended up winning 25-10. Um, then the Saints go play the Bucks. They were winning 16-6 at halftime, which was crazy. The fact that they were beating the Buccaneers 16-6 is hilarious to me. But similar to how the last game went, I'm the fact that that was a one score game. It was 27-19. The Bucks won. The fact that it was a one score game is hilarious to me. The Bucks are a playoff team. Going into the year, I picked the Bucks to win the division. It was I just my expectations on the Saints were to try and get around 500. Um, but I with Dennis Allen as the head coach, I didn't expect that. Um, so Darren Rizzi was feisty. I liked his presence initially, but you know, with all the injuries, it didn't help. I would have loved to see what Darren Rizzi could have done with an actual healthy offense. I think the defense still did well even without Dennis Allen. And I think that's something to hold on to in into next year. Um, but the offense was just, I mean, it sucks for someone like I was about to say Shanahan. Wow, I'm missing our offensive coordinator's name. Um, uh, Clint Kubiak, yeah. I was thinking of Gary Kubiak, and I was thinking of Sons and stuff. Gary Kubiak, Clint Kubiak, Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak is such a good play caller, and that's one thing I noticed. Um, and even in this, and he's honestly the reason this last game. But I think the coaches were holding it together for this team in this last game, and I mean the Bucks are just they were healthy and the Saints weren't. Um, I would have liked to see what the game would have been like if Alvin Kamara was even playing, just Alvin Kamara. Because I think Spencer Rattler held his own. I just think the talent of the players around him kind of just wasn't enough to keep the momentum going into the second half. So, um, also, I want to point out, I want to congratulate Mike Evans on his achievement of second most consecutive 1,000 yard seasons. They got that on the last play. I will say, secondly to that, um, if that were Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Antonio Brown, um, the majority of wide receivers in the NFL, is the media treating it, would the media have looked differently upon the Bucks potentially risking their season on one play? I'm just saying. I do think a lot of people love Mike Evans. I mean he's a future Hall of Famer. He's arguably the best Buccaneer in team history. Um, Up there with Derek Brooks, up there with Warren Sapp, up there with John Lynch, up there with Mike Allstott, up there with Leroy Solomon. up there with all the greats of that franchise. And I don't know. Mike Evans is such a good guy that, and he's the definition of consistency post Larry Fitzgerald. Um, and I mean, he was during Larry, but you get what I mean. Uh, and I think if that were someone else, I think if that were a different receiver in that moment, I do think that the media would be looking a little differently at the team and the player specifically. So that's not knocking on Mike Evans. I think that's on the media for choosing who they want to highlight as this great and who they want to highlight as a foe. Um, as someone like Tyreek Hill, someone like Antonio Brown. I think all of those guys I've named are future Hall of Famers. And yeah, that's what I'll say on that. Um, Otherwise, looking at the whole season, we'll kind of go one to one, offense to defense, and look at coaches, because the Saints are going to be in the market for a head coach. And offensively, Derek Carr says he doesn't want to restructure. I saw that either this morning or yesterday morning. And I mean, if Derek Carr doesn't want to restructure, I mean, consider cutting him, consider trading him, consider doing something. Because I think whatever new regime comes in, they're going to want a different quarterback. I think Spencer Rattler has shown a lot of potential, all things considered. Um, I don't remember what game it was, but it kind of showed me that Spencer Rattler was not I said it in the last video that Spencer Rattler wasn't a franchise quarterback. He's not. But he's got a lot of potential, and I think I would like to see him with actual talent around him, like just the starting lineup for the Saints. Because, I mean, the Saints were without their starters, and Spencer Rattler's thrown in this improbable improbable situation that there aren't many quarterbacks in league history that could have made a positive out of that. I think if you threw in Brady or Mahomes in their prime on this team, I don't think they make the playoffs. That's with the injuries to Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Kamara, Taysom Hill, all of the offensive line onto the defense. That's with the coaches changes from Allen to Rizzi. I don't think anyone in this situation would have done anything. I'm not saying Rattler is this great quarterback. I literally just said a couple minutes ago he's not a franchise quarterback. But I just want to see at least what he can do with a solid lineup. Um, so that's my argument as to why Rattler should maybe compete with someone else for the starting job next year. Um, I think he's deserving of that. Alvin Kamara's locked in long term. Love it. Love to see that. Alvin I mean, he's the franchise right now. I would love to see him pass the torch eventually to a quarterback, sort of like Breeze passes the torch to him. Um, yeah, Kendrick Miller has shown some promise, something that Jamal Williams just never did. I think Jamal Williams is going to be out the door next year. And but Kendrick Miller provided some spark and some carries, and I think you rotate him in and out with Kamara. I think he'd be a good change of pace back next year. Wide receivers outside of Chris Olave, it sucks. Chris Olave had 3 consecutive games with just the most unlucky hits on him that led to concussions. It's just one concussion, really. I mean, he could have returned. From what I've heard, he could have returned. I'm kind of glad he didn't play. He didn't deserve to play for this through this in the same way that Alvin Kamara didn't deserve it. I'm so frustrated beyond what you're seeing out of me that Kamara did not get 1,000 rushing yards this year. because he was more than capable of doing that this year. He was 50 yards away, and he didn't play the last 3 weeks. So it sucks. And when you're playing from behind a lot, he's not going to get a lot of the carries. So he was very effective still in the pass game. He was second among running backs in catches still, which is incredible considering he didn't play the last 3 weeks. Um, yeah, and but yeah, going to back to Olave. I love Olave. Um, I had a debate with someone over the weekend where they said that the Bucks starting three receivers, including Godwin, would be wide receiver one on the Saints. That included McMillan. Um, if you want to, on in your own free will, go look up since Chris Olave entered the league, the stats between Olave and Chris Godwin, and tell me they are pretty much identical. Same amount of games. Um, Olave has less catches and targets, less than 100 less yards, and they have the same amount of receiving touchdowns. So do with that what you will, but I absolutely will take Chris Olave as my wide receiver one over McMillan and over Godwin because of age. Godwin hasn't gotten hurt all that much this year. He got the most unlucky injuries back to back to back games, but it wasn't as significant as Chris Godwin's injuries. I love Godwin. I loved watching him at Penn State. But age is a factor. I would choose Olave. Production is literally the same between the two of them since Olave has entered the league. And then obviously Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer. I won't even argue Olave over Evans. Olave still has a lot of his career left, but Mike Evans is right now the best wide receiver in the South, in the NFC South. Um, Rashid Shaheed had such a great start to the year. He was one of arguably the best deep threat in the whole league and it for the first couple weeks, and then he got hurt, and that sucks. I can't wait to see him this year. Marquez Valdes-Scantling came out of nowhere. Valdes-Scantling was playing better than he played with Patrick Mahomes, with Aaron Rodgers, and Josh Allen. It's hilarious actually that he's played better with Spencer Rattler and Derek Carr than with any of those guys. And he has the talent, but he's just never shown that he can be productive. So I'm curious how if he even fits into the offense next year. Um, Outside of that, I think the best thing to look at if you're not going to go quarterback in the draft, then I think the best thing to do is go wide receiver. You need someone to complement Olave. Rashid Shaheed isn't that guy. He is a deep threat. He is an elite deep threat. And I just don't think the Saints have that receiver to complement him. And I think we try too hard with Taysom Hill for that to be him. Taysom Hill is getting up there in age. He's what, 35? Or he'll be 35. And I don't know if Taysom Hill is going to fit into this team next year. I really hope so. I love Taysom Hill. I think I think if the Saints don't re-sign him, I think he does sign somewhere else. I think that is in Denver. I think him and Bo Nix him being a nice tight end for Bo Nix, a nice fullback for the backs out there. Sean Payton knows him very well. I think Taysom Hill would go to Denver or anywhere else. I think Taysom Hill would be successful um, if if he returns the same player that he was post injury. Um, yeah, I hope Taysom Hill's part of the offense next year. I think the tight end room is great. Foster Moreau and Jawan Johnson, I think that is a good group of tight ends. to give to whoever may be playing quarterback next year. But yeah, I think getting a wide receiver is probably the best thing if you're not going to go quarterback in the draft. Because if you're going to ask me what I think we should do, I think we should definitely draft the quarterback. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of prospects in this draft, but I think some of them have a lot of potential. Um, Talise Fuaga, the first round left tackle that the Saints drafted was fantastic all year long. The most consistent player on the offense and the most healthy on the offense. Um, Eric McCoy is obviously he's got experience as a Pro Bowl center. Cesar Ruiz has his games where he looks great and has games where he looks terrible. Trevor Penning's been always hit or miss. Dude, just he's always picking a fight, and I don't like it. I think I'm at a point where maybe we need to find someone else to just replace him. Who knows if Ramczyk is coming back? Ramczyk, I mean, if Ramczyk was going to retire, he would have retired already. Um, but if he comes back, then wow, we have our tackles all set. Ramczyk, an all-pro right tackle. Fuaga, one of who was one of the best rookie linemen this year. Um, that's we got our and that's one of the most important parts of any offense is the tackles. So that's perfect. You get Eric McCoy at center. As long as they can stay healthy, that's great. Lucas Patrick, when he before he got hurt, he was fantastic. He was one of the best guards in all of football before he got hurt, which was shocking to me. So I mean, who knows if Lucas Patrick returns? He's getting up there in age, so who knows? If you're going to look at anywhere on the offensive line to fix, it's definitely the guard spots. Um, yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at for the offense. Defensively, you got to get edge rushers. I don't know who the head coach is going to be. I'm going to actually skip the defense. I'll come back to it. I'm going to talk about coaching position because that might affect the defense. So, right now, I think I've said it before that I didn't want Aaron Glenn. Um, I've been going back and forth on that. But all right, Darren Rizzi, I think Darren Rizzi was put into an interesting spot, and I think he started off well, but I don't think he's meant to be a head coach. I know the Jets just in are they asked the Saints to interview him. Um the Jets have no idea the Jets are interviewing not coaches but characters, and I think that's funny. Um Rex Ryan is on the list. Uh, they, it's so funny. The Jets are funny. Anyways, yeah, Darren Rizzi, awesome job. Joe Woods came in. I was worried when Joe Woods came in because Dennis Allen is one of the best defensive minds in all of football. And when he's just focusing on the defense, and I thought when he left that the defense would immediately struggle, but they did not. They still balled out. Joe Woods was okay as a defensive play caller, but the players still did great. Kool-Aid McKinstry was hit or miss at times. I still think he's got a lot of potential. Alontae Taylor played well, uh, and that's the cornerback position. Um, I don't think. I think maybe in the free agency you want to look at a veteran corner, someone like Stephon Gilmore, um, someone of that level, maybe Jalen Ramsey. Don't give them the bag, but maybe someone who what just wants a landing spot to fill a defense, maybe on a 1 year deal. What Stephon Gilmore basically got, someone like that on the Saints, to try and help that young group out. Tyrann Matthews, a free agent, you want to re-sign him. That's probably the number one priority in terms of free agents. Um, I don't know if the Saints can even afford him, but that's kind of what you want to do. I think if you re-sign him, you should be able to free up some money. I don't know. I'm not a financial guru. I'm not. Don't ask me. I'm in marketing. Um, uh, yeah, you want to find a safety. I think one of the most important spots on the entire defense is that safety spot right next to um right next to Tyran, because that was an issue all year long. We had no idea who that safety was. So, yeah, Demario Davis, even though he's older, he's still playing at a high level every single game, every single snap. Pete Warner's a solid cover. He's a good linebacker. I really like him. I was worried when Anzalone left for Detroit uh that I didn't know if Pete Warner would be ready or not, and he's been ready. I really like Pete Warner. Um, Cameron Jordan's Cameron Jordan's not as effective as he once was, and it sucks. I love Cameron Jordan. Chase Young was terrible. He had occasionally a good player here or two, but I don't want him back. Carl Granderson has been as good as he's always been. He's always a nice guy to change a pace in at the edge rusher position. Interior defensive line, Brian Bresee was awesome. I can't wait to see a full year of him. If he can play like in a 3-4 defense, I think the league will be able to see like how great he is. Kalen Saunders also phenomenal. Um, Not a lot of Nathan Shefford this year, but if you can get Saunders and Bresee going as starters for the future, I think the defense looks good. I think the defense looks good enough to where you don't need to make drastic changes. I think we have good players at good spots. You can make a couple changes here or two, but focus on the offense. Um, get an edge rusher, get a young edge rusher. That's probably where I attack the first round of the draft if you're going on defense. Um, I mean, if you're going to pay someone, if you're going to pay anyone in free agency that's not on your team right now, probably go look at an edge rusher. That's really it. Um, yeah, I like how the defense looks. If you can re-sign Tyrann Mathieu, I like how everything shakes up. And the thing is, the defense could change a lot depending on who the coach is, and that's where I'll end things off with who I would like as the coach. So I've been going back and forth on whether I want an actual coach for a specific side of the ball or like a leader, and I don't want a coach that focuses on the offense. That's my first thought because I think Clint Kubiak is good enough to call the offense on his own in it for it to be his offense. So what that leaves us is a defensive minded coach or some sort of leader. Um, if I'm going with a defensive minded coach, there's Aaron Glenn and Brian Flores, who off the top of are my two top names. Um, I personally like Brian Flores' defense more. I think schematically, his defense is incredible. Um, I think that defense kind of I don't think it works for a couple of guys on the defense like Cameron Jordan. I don't think it works for him unless he can slide inside. And but you need to have edge rushers. I think Brian Flores can do a great job. I was one of the few people that was against the Dolphins firing Brian Flores a couple years ago. And Mike McDaniel is an awesome play caller, but I have a lot of respect for him, but I have a lot of respect for Brian Flores. I think he can be a leader and someone that is just great at scheming at defense. He's so good at scheming at defense. I love the way he schemes at defense. I mean, if I'm making a defense, I want his style of defense. Um, so if Brian Flores is one of my top names, and then after that, it's we're looking at like leaders, whatever you want to call them. I just call them leaders. That's kind of just what I call it. Your Siriannis of the world, your Mike Vrabels of the world, your Mike Tomlins of the world, your John Harbaughs of the world. Um, Mike Vrabel's one of the names. Um, I'm not a huge fan. I don't like the way Mike Vrabel handles losing. And because I think every coach needs to know how to handle winning and losing. Um, and that's what made Bill Belichick so great is he was, I think, the best coach in NFL history at handling wins and losses. Um, and I don't think Vrabel does a great job of handling losses. Um, with that being said, I don't know if there's necessarily someone like that that I would want. I think if the Saints hired Vrabel, I'd be okay with it. I know we would have a lot of players wanting to play with him, and I think that's great and all, but right now we're kind of in a mess with the salary cap. Here's the thing, at the end of every year, as a Saints and Eagles fan, at the end of every year, everybody who doesn't know the salary cap or how it works thinks the Saints are in cap hell, the Eagles are in cap hell, and then they get out of it and they're like, "Oh, see, salary cap doesn't exist." Oh, it exists, but there are ways around them and how to work the salary cap with contract extensions and cutting certain guys at certain years. You need to be able to do certain things with the salary cap. So I'm not too worried. The Saints have been in this situation before. Um, and I know it seems like I'm putting a band-aid on the team, but I do think my perfect offseason is to get Brian Flores, let him focus on the defense. Clint Kubiak focuses on the offense. I really hope whoever comes in at head coach keeps Clint Kubiak. That's, I think, the first thing I want to know. Are you keeping Clint Kubiak or are you not? If you are not, then we have a huge issue because I have no idea what the offense is going to be like. Um, Next, I would draft a quarterback. Um, Shador and Cam Ward are the two top quarterbacks. It doesn't look like they would fall to the Saints at 9. We have the ninth pick in the draft. So I would then take Luther Burden. I like Luther Burden. I like his last name. Um, and I think he complements the receiving core quite well with Olave and Rashid Shaheed. I think he would fit very good in the receiving core. Um, I would wait to sign some veteran cornerback on a short-term deal. Um, I would, and if I'm gonna make one splash move, it's to sign an edge rusher. And that's kind of it. I want to re-sign some of the guys. I want to look at another safety to go next to Tyrann. Safeties are always a good. Uh, you can always get a good safety cheap, and you can complement Tyrann Mathieu very well by doing so. Uh, then yeah, that's kind of how I want the team to look. The defense is sort of, I mean, defense is over 50% done in my opinion after that. Offensively, then that's where you got to focus on if you're not going to draft a quarterback, go after some quarterback who can be cheap and compete with Rattler for the job. You want to try and focus on this is the type of year that if you're not going to draft a quarterback to be your franchise or you're not going to trade for one, and you're going to go after some cheap veteran, perfect year to build a core for a young quarterback of the future to come in and be successful. Similar to um, similar to what the Raiders had before this year when they had Jacoby Myers, or before the season started when they had Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, Jacoby Myers, and we thought they were going to have Josh Jacobs, but they didn't. I mean, they I mean, that going into last offseason, the Raiders were like a team that a young quarterback could go to and potentially be successful, but they chose to go after Gardner Minshew. Um, and I just want to keep this group together, build upon it with the draft, some free agent moves, and then maybe next year look into getting a quarterback. So this is going to be it might be another rebuilding year. Um, I think the most important things right now are the quarterback and head coach position, and sucks considering Saints had Drew Brees and Sean Payton for all those years. I mean, this is kind of what happens. So, that's it. That's my end of the season recap for the Saints. Yeah, that's really it. I'll probably release a couple more videos about the Saints, maybe before free agency, talk about some signings, and yeah, that's it. So I'll see you then.